Hey guys, as you know, You Have My Sword is on a break while we get ready for an even better season 2, but I'll be introducing you to some of my favorite podcasts that I think you'll like too. This episode, we have a podcast called What Else Do You Do? Hosted by Masao Kobayashi, co-founder and producer for indie studio Cut to Bits. What Else Do You Do has Masao interview game developers about, you guessed it, what else they do. In this episode, he interviews Anouk Bachman, production manager at Ubisoft Montreal, about what else she does. And this episode delivers more than just some insight on kickboxing, but goes deeper into the human experience from the point of view of someone who has endured quite a lot, all while keeping forward momentum. Trigger warnings for some, this episode touches on child loss and cancer, but also touches on being a bad bitch, kickboxing, the games industry, and why eating shit and failing makes us better people. I'm obsessed with this episode. It's very comfy, and I hope it leaves you feeling rejuvenated and motivated like it did me. Thank you, Masao, for your gorgeous podcast. And hey, after you listen to this episode, check out episode 35 with yours truly talking about chainmail, blacksmithing, and Masao even goes deep on the art of Japanese knife sharpening and water stones, which I watched roughly 10 hours worth of YouTube videos about the subject after we recorded, and it is fascinating and very cool. It's really cool to keep these traditions and crafts alive as our modern society slowly renders them into antiquity. Okay, thank you guys, and here is What Else Do You Do?
Hello, and welcome to What Else Do You Do? I'm your host, Masao. I'm a producer at Studio Cut to Bits in Montreal. So this week, our guest is Anouk Bachman. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah. So my name is Anouk. I'm a production manager at Ubisoft Montreal. And I moved to Montreal about 13 years ago from San Francisco, where I did my degree. And before that, I was born and raised in Holland.
So this podcast is called What Else Do You Do? So what else do you do? Or what else did you do before the pandemic?
Yeah, because that's a really good question, right? Because the world has changed, and so have I. But before the pandemic, next to being at the time I was working in marketing at Ubisoft Montreal, I am also a parent to a little boy, Casper, and I do martial arts in my free time, specifically kickboxing.
So what got you into kickboxing?
So that's kind of a long story that goes. Yeah, I can go very, very far back. I picked up jiu-jitsu for the first time when I was about 12 years old and did that for a few years, stopped in my teenage years because there were other things. And then I dabbled in karate for about 5 to 7 years, moved to San Francisco, did taekwondo for several years. And then when I moved to Montreal, I kind of lost all touch with martial arts. For several years, I got married, gave birth to Casper, and joined the game industry. I was very, very tired overall, very, very busy. And then one day a divorce happened, and I was very, very lost, very depressed, and needed to fill the time that my son was with his father to do something for myself. And I really needed to find a better outlet for these kind of negative feelings than anything else, So I was walking outside of Ubisoft, and I walked past a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu MMA gym. And I just walked in and said, hey, I'm old, to start with that kind of sport, which is, I was 35 at the time. And I've never done this. And how do I start? And Koji, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, was really welcoming. And he introduced me as well to Patrick, who is the kickbox coach there. And that's how I rolled into it. And it went from never having done that to doing that 4 or 5 times a week over the last years until the pandemic.
So what do you like about kickboxing?
I think, for me, not just kickboxing, but martial arts in general has had a huge mental health factor for me. I'm a very anxious person. I get into my head a lot. I overthink. I worry. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder in my 20s, which is, I don't necessarily like to give labels too easily, but that one fits me very well. And I think martial arts for me is a way, like martial arts is very, very intense. At least the martial arts I've practiced. And you don't have time to think. You don't have time to overthink. You're learning to work with your brain and body in a way that's, I feel, quite primal. It goes back to developing instincts and getting in touch with your body and mind in a way that goes back to the roots, I think. And so that's been a huge thing for me. And I think, of course, that's not just martial arts. It could be, for other people, that could be chess or horse riding. It's just for me that happened to be martial arts, also because I'm a person, even though I'm an anxious person, I'm very adventurous. I like risk taking. So it seems like I'm a walking paradox. So I don't mind finding some things that kind of put me into a certain a feeling of physical danger. It's thrilling. It gives me a big thrill, and yet it's a very safe environment to practice that in. So I think that kind of sums it up. It seems that a lot of people I talked to over the years who practice kickboxing and other martial arts have, there's a lot of motivations like that, like dealing with certain emotions in a way that's much healthier, methodical, and calming, even though it may not look very peaceful. I've never been so zen as walking out after like a 3-hour training,
Is there any competitive aspect to it for you, or is it more of a process and training for you?
I have done some competitions in the past, just amateur competitions. I'm not naturally a competitive person at all. I like to be part of a team without feeling that people completely rely on me, So I think that's a nice thing about martial arts. Like, you join a gym or you join a team, like, the kickboxing guys, like, because they were all guys, they all became buddies, like you feel part of a team, and yet you're constantly sparring with each other, but helping each other be better.
It's like a friendly competition rather than cutthroat.
Exactly. Even though you can still, like, occasionally I would walk out with a black eye. It didn't happen often, but it happened. So I think for me, there was not so much competition. I can see why people do want that. And I've seen a lot of people I trained with are MMA fighters or are deep into competition. But for me, it was more like, I just want to be part of this gang of cool people and learn from them and get better and feel stronger. And that was the most important thing for me.
Well, let's bring it back to game dev. What do you get out of kickboxing that you don't get out of game dev?
I think that comes down to, again, it's like the very different way of using my brain when I practiced martial arts. It's been over a year now, sadly, and I miss it very much. But yeah, I think it comes down to, like, in game dev, my job means that I'm constantly interacting with people. I constantly have to problem solve and help people prioritize, find their tasks. And it's just a very different side from your brain, because it's funny, because in kickboxing, for instance, you're also problem solving in many ways, but on a very instinctive level, That's kind of it for me. It's like that primal brain, or what you call like the lizard brain, that can also make me very anxious. Like, I kind of engage it in kickboxing and get in touch with that lizard brain rather than running away from it. What I used to do with my anxiety is like try to ignore it or try to not engage it. And with kickboxing, I'm full on facing it. So it's a very different way of using my brain, and of course also my body, because in game dev, like, you don't do anything with your body. I mean, you type. So I think it's also a very matter of fact thing that, being in game dev, sitting on a chair, it's not the best for your back. It's not the best for your muscles, your posture. So one thing that you have to have in kickboxing is a very upright posture, a very straight back. You're using all your muscles. So I think on a very just practical day-to-day level, it helped me out a lot with back pain and things like that, and posture overall.
Okay, so let's flip that question around. What do you think kickboxing brings to you as a game developer in terms of your process or creative output?
I think kickboxing has really taught me how to eat shit. It's been really rough. I'm not very good at it, like that's it. Like I would train with people who've been in the cage, in MMA cages and all that stuff. So I'm constantly failing in a way, but it's the only way to get better. There's never a time in kickboxing where you're not failing, like unless you're like maybe one of the best UFC fighters, which is, but it's really humbling because you learn that the only way to get better is by getting punched in the gut or getting tackled. Like, okay, you don't keep your guard up, you're going to get a glove in your face. You will learn how to keep your guard up, and it will happen over and over again. I think coming to terms with that kind of, okay, I'm failing, but that's okay. It's fine. This is what I'm here for. This is what life is about. And I think bringing that to game dev, where I think me and a lot of other people have quite an imposter syndrome, right? I think I work with people who are a lot smarter than me, who are a lot better than me. And I've learned, instead of comparing myself to those people or feeling like I don't belong or feeling like I shouldn't be there, I don't deserve to be there. Like in kickboxing, I walk in and I know I'm the shittiest person there, but it's okay. I'm part of the team. And in game dev, I'm like, okay, I'm not as technical. I'm not an artist. I belong. It's okay for me to be there. I deserve my spot. I work hard and I learn. And and occasionally I eat shit on whether it's game dev or kickboxing, and it makes me better.
I've actually read an article, I think it was a Harvard Business Review, and they were talking about actually how people don't really learn from success, that humans are really not designed to learn from success. We're designed to learn from failure. So failing is actually really important. And to a certain extent, if you're not failing, it means that you're not pushing yourself.
Yeah, I think that could be true. I think until my 30s, my life was pretty, I would say, flawless, successful. Like I grew up with a great family in Holland, wonderful parents, great childhood, privileged, good education, nice people. Yes, I had a massive anxiety disorder, but that was like the only thing going against. And then in my 30s, life really threw me curveballs, in terms of an unexpected divorce, in terms of some really bad health things that happened to me. I went through pregnancy loss. I went through having to deal with some cancer cells and chemotherapy, like nothing huge, but shitty. And I think,
cancer is kind of a big deal. I think you could say that it's a big deal.
It was like some cells that went rogue, so it's like, I don't know, I think you could compare it to like stage 1 or stage 0.5.
I'm not saying that like it's like the biggest deal, but like I think any cancer or any chemotherapy is a pretty big deal.
It really sucked, and I had to deal with loss, with pregnancy loss, which I'm very open about because I was very ashamed of it. And then you learn how many people have to face that. And so I think, these are not necessarily, like, rationally, I know these are not failures, but you feel like you fail. Like my marriage failed, my pregnancies failed, my body failed. I felt like everything was failing, and I dealt with it really well, really, really well. And that was a huge surprise to me, as well as my psychologist. Actually, my psychologist wasn't that surprised. She said, I do better in crisis situations than in day-to-day life. And I think she's right. But I dealt with these things really well. And I do credit, martial arts with helping me, like in the way how I use my brain, actively, it almost has a meditative effect, how to engage with my body, how to, just how to face danger. And the thing is, like, even when I only had one round of chemo, and it still sucked. I was very sick. I still kept going to kickboxing as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, even though, I told the people there, and I was, obviously not really sparring or anything. I needed that to kind of make peace with my body and what was happening to me at the time. And I would throw up, but in the toilet. not on the map, but like, and people there got it. It's like you create this bond with the people in the dojo that you don't necessarily, even though you don't necessarily know them all that well, you don't necessarily see them outside of the dojo, but you'll kind of know why you're there. You know, everybody's there for the end reasons. Everybody is fighting something. And whether it's themselves or a situation, we're all there for our own reasons, you know? So I think that was really, really helpful. And it got me through a lot of really tough shit. So it's you know, and I think it's one of the reasons why, yes, I will go back. I'm 40 years old now. So I'm like definitely not in prime kickboxing shape anymore, you know, because like recovery, like even though I feel like I'm in better shape now than I was in my 20s, the recovery can be hard and I don't have time for recovery, you know, like I don't have time to lay in bed. Like I'm a parent, I'm an employee. I can't just like recover from a 3-hour kickboxing session for a day, but I just train differently and I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, I just want to say I think you're like super hard on yourself. I think you're super cool and super smart. And I've known you for a while, so for whatever that's worth.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, yes, thank you. I need to not like just say thank you, but you know, I'm learning that. I'm trying to also give that example to my son. You know, it's like it's okay to be like, yeah, I'm pretty cool. I got this. You know, I think it was a rough couple of years in the last like 4 or 5 years have been tough on me, but I think the last year, even though it was a pandemic, was one of the best of my life. And I mean, I also have a hard time saying that out loud because like, in a time that people have had like some of the worst year of their life, I was thriving. And I think part of it was that, and again, like I talked to a therapist about this, which I think is very important to acknowledge. You know, I think almost everybody should see a therapist. But yeah, I was saying to her, I think after everything that happened over the last years, the pandemic just wasn't that big of a deal to me.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal. Don't
It's a
get me
big deal.
on the
It's a big
grand
deal,
scheme
yeah,
of
for
things.
sure.
But it's like I feel like for me, it wasn't a big deal. And I mean, and it is a big deal. Don't get me wrong. I've people suffer, but for me personally, it's
totally
like I have no control over this, and that's why I'm able to let it go. And I think I've learned that over the years, where here's a situation on a global scale. I have zero control over this. All I can do is wear my mask and keep my distance, and that's it, you know? So for me, that was it. Like I adapted to the situation, and then there's nothing else I can do. So I'm at peace with that, you know? And I think I learned that kind of thinking through by having gone through situations that felt completely out of my control before. Like the health situations, the pregnancy losses, even the divorce, you know, like I had zero control over this. And there's so much letting go that has to happen. And I think that helped me deal with the pandemic too. Like it sucks. I haven't seen my family in over a year. I miss them. I worry about them, but I can't control that.
So yeah, our last question is, what is something you'd like people to know about kickboxing?
I think the most important thing for me that I would advise other people is, you know, whether it's kickboxing or karate or taekwondo, or jiu-jitsu, like those are the sports I have experience with. Just give it a shot if you like the look of it. Like, I mean, I know that I just mentioned, like, yeah, if I experienced a black eye, things like that, but you set your own boundaries, right? And if it's a good team and a good coach, they respect your boundaries. Like, yes, I've walked out with black eye, but I also went to kickboxing right after a pregnancy loss and subsequent surgery and blood transfusions during chemo. Nobody touched me, you know? I was still able to practice, but like I think it's in general, and I found the dojos, at least the dojos I have experience with, and maybe I've just been really lucky, some of the safest and most respectful places I've ever been in, like where I could truly be myself, no matter how old you are, no matter what gender you are. Of course, if you walk into a club and you don't trust the vibe, then you have to go straight back out. I think I've been lucky enough that the places I've been through, whether it was karate in Amsterdam, taekwondo in San Francisco, jiu-jitsu and kickboxing here in Montreal, I've made friends, and I'm happy I walked in. And there's a huge hurdle, you know, because I know that when it's safe again, safe enough to practice again, I will walk back, and I'll be nervous, because I've lost that kind of training shape. Like I'm still training every day, but not in kickboxing. So it's going to take some time to get back into it. But I will go back, and I will tell my coach and whoever I would train with, like, take it easy on me, because I'm a little nervous, and I trust them to do that, and they will. So that's kind of my advice. It's like, if you're interested, just do it. Like, just walk in, or find a group on, I don't know, a local group. There's so much on the internet, somebody to connect with who can tell you about it, But generally, dojos or classes, like, they offer a class or something like that for free, and you don't have to worry about it. Just give it a shot. If you don't like it, you don't have to continue. That's it.
Well, that was awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation, and your honesty and vulnerability, I think, is an inspiration and powerful. And yeah, thank you very much for this.
I thank you too. Yeah, I hope I wasn't too much of a downer.
No,
I mean,
I don't think so. I think we talked about some real shit, and things. Sometimes things can be hard, but
yeah, I
that's
just
life.
I felt like it was important to mention things like real life as it happened, and I'm very confident these days. I'm very happy in my life, and I just felt like while going through those things, felt very lonely and insecure, and listening or reading other people's stories helped me. So I don't know, maybe it helps someone else to hear that things can be tough, and you'll get through it, and that's okay.
I've actually become much more open about my mental health and the fact that I'm in therapy because of you, because you have
Wow.
been so public about it. And I'm like, yeah, there's no reason to be like, this is not something to be ashamed of. This is something that we should talk openly. So
Yeah, we should.
I've never mentioned it before, but it's you are the reason I talk about it. So
That's
I appreciate it.
amazing. That's amazing, and that's like the biggest gift to me, because other people who talk to me about it help me break through those barriers, because growing up in Holland, like, it's a bit stoic, it's a bit like, just be normal, that's crazy enough. And it took me, I was almost 30 when I started therapy and treatment, and it changed my life. And I think, I don't want to have to go on for too long. I don't want to take up your time, but I think one of the most important things is psychiatrists.
You're not taking up my time. Like
Okay.
I'm the one that asked to talk to you. So
Okay.
please take as much time as you
I
like.
guess because if anybody is struggling, like, the most hopeful thing and helpful thing that a psychiatrist, like, I saw a psychiatrist in San Francisco. It was like I was doing very badly because I had very uncontrolled anxiety. And it was the first time I was seeing professionals for that, and first time I was diagnosed. Because in Holland, this kind of wasn't done at the time. And she said to me, like, she talked to me about brain plasticity, like how by changing your habits, your thought patterns, through, obviously, like, therapy, everything that you do, you can actually change the way your brain is wired, and that gave me so much hope, because I'm still an anxious person, but I very rarely to never have panic attacks anymore. And, the anxiety is quite minimal these days. And I think that a lot of that is because I've really put a lot of time and effort into things like cognitive behavioral therapy, exercise, including martial arts, including kickboxing, yoga, meditation, in order to kind of pursue that rewiring of the brain, or how the neurotransmitters. I mean, I'm not a scientist, of course. But like, you can read about it, and it's super interesting, because I find it one of the most hopeful messages when it comes to mental health conditions like anxiety and depression, is that it is possible to change how your brain reacts to things. And I think it's true, like, I think I've seen it happen to me. And I think that's the one thing that I would say, a message that I would give to anyone who's young, or who's newly diagnosed with anxiety, or maybe has had it for many years and doesn't know what to do with it. Like, this change is possible. But it takes a lot of effort, But it's like, the good thing is that it takes good effort, like, healthy habits, sports, therapy. There's no shame. There's no shame in that. I think half the world has it these days or more.
I mean, I think more people should be in therapy than who are actually in there. So
yeah, I think it would make the world a better place. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for saying that. And I think, I see my therapist only once every 3 months. So I don't go very much anymore, but I still come out of every session like a weight lifted from me, like a point where I can just be honest, and she can really confront me with, like, she asks me the hard questions and makes me kind of change perspective on things. And again, that's where I go into the brain plasticity. I get stuck in these worry loops. I get stuck in cycles. Before the pandemic, there were a few things that could take me out of that, which is my son, kickboxing, and my therapist. Now I don't have kickboxing anymore for now. And when my son is with his dad, if I feel that I'm getting stuck in a loop, I had some like medical anxiety after the things that happened to me. I talk to her and she kind of resets me, like it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. So that's it. So I guess my message is like, go to kickboxing and therapy.
Well, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime, man. It was so good to talk to you. I miss people. I didn't think I would say that, but I do. And yeah, and hopefully we'll get to hang out not too long from now. Godspeed for the vaccines.
Yeah. Well, take care.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for listening, and please remember to rate and subscribe in your preferred podcast app. Thank you to Dave Wallace for providing the music on the episode, and thank you to Therese Lance for providing the logo. Bye.
Edgeworks Nebula.